Hey, welcome in.
Welcome to the Arrowhead Addict podcast.
We are here coming to you live.
Let me tell you, the dopamine, it's flowing.
I am damn excited.
We are so excited to be joining you guys tonight.
Oh! Well, how you doing, man? Patrick.
Will, Sterling.
Yeah.
Super Bowl champion, two-time Pro Bowler, and Trent Green. Trent Green, how you doing?
Hey, what's going on, guys?
He picked it up! He picked it up! He's gonna
And we'll see you next week. But until then, as always, go Chiefs.
Welcome into the Arrowhead Addict Podcast Tuesday edition. Sterling Holmes, Josh Briscoe. Things are good yet again in Chiefs Kingdom. Hell yeah. All of the haters, suck it. Kick rocks. Brian Kelly, like Malik Neighbor said to him on Instagram, kick rocks. Damn, is it exciting to be a Chiefs fan when all of the demise was plastered. You can hear it in Troy Aikman's face during the game. Well, I don't know if that's a catch by Kelsey. Looks like he may have bobbled it, as you've never seen a stronger grip on the ball in your entire life. Oh, yeah, but Terry McLaurin's obviously in. Dog, Troy, you need some LASIK? What's going on, guy? Does not matter. For all the haters, the Chiefs are going nowhere. Deal with it. And they might be getting someone back. A big boy back in KC. We'll talk about that and a whole lot more.
No need to tease it, Sterling. I am in Kansas. Oh, that's not. Okay, sorry. Yeah, my bad.
How you doing, Briscoe?
I'm great, dude. I am excellent, and I will go ahead. I know that was our final Monday night game of the year, barring a flex or whatever. But I will go ahead and be a good teammate, and I will say there's never a bad day to listen to the Chiefs radio network, and I think the best day is probably Monday. Because I tell you what, I am no longer hearing the TV broadcast this year. I'm just getting Mitch Holthus, Dana Hughes, Josh Klingler right into the headphones in the studio, and there is, I will say, significantly less nonsense. Not less fun nonsense, less true nonsense. So I had a great time during the game and the whole shebang last night. I bizarrely stayed up for the entirety of that World Series game because I love weird sports, even though I'm pretty neutral on non-Royals baseball right now. I feel great until the moment I'm done podcasting today when I am going to go into a cocoon.
Well, Mike Pennel.
What about him, Stu?
He has been released. And the Chiefs need defensive tackle help. And the Chiefs love reunions. And he fits under the cap construct of what the Chiefs would be looking for. I and you, and I think 99% of people, were perplexed when they chose to move on from Mike Pennel, trade for Derek Nottie, who they just recently moved on from in the offseason. Long story, yet here they are. It does feel like the obvious answer here is a Mike Pennel reunion. The only thing I could think that would keep this from happening would be unless Mike Pennel felt some sort of way after the Chiefs decided to trade back for Nottie over him. I barring that, which I do think could be a realistic aspect, this is going to happen, right? Like Mike Pennel is going to be back in KC.
You are right to be skeptical of the most obvious thing in the world, because usually the most obvious thing in the world doesn't pan out in the way that you expect it to. But sometimes it just has to. This has to be a reunion. This makes so much sense. You're right. I'm with you. I think the one thing is that if there are any hurt feelings or any egos or anything in that relationship that maybe ended in a really sour place, maybe that's enough for maybe it's Mike Pennel, maybe it's Brett Veach. Maybe it's enough for one of those parties to say, you know what? I'm good. But boy, I hope that's not the case. It makes a ton of sense for Mike Pennel. He's, an older player that the Bengals made a few moves without having guys being added to the roster. So I don't even know if we have seen the entirety of the Bengals defensive roster churn plan or whatever. But by and large, not only do the Chiefs, they needed to make a move, I think, before Omar Norman-Lott got hurt. I was looking at the defensive tackle room as a spot that needed another body. Now, with Omar being out for the year, Brett Veach can say whatever he needs to say to Mike Pennel or however that relationship went. You say, hey, man, look, we had a rookie we wanted to get some more work to, and maybe they're trying to sneak him to the practice squad, and he felt like he belonged on the active roster. Good news, brother. You can have an active roster spot today if you want it. I know they've had a little bit of shuffling there. They have 3 defensive tackles on the active roster and 3 on the practice squad. Marlon Tuipulotu got the call up for yesterday's game. He played a tiny, tiny bit. And I think Mike Pennel could out-snap Derek Nottie almost immediately. So it just makes so much sense. Add Mike Pennel and keep making calls about the pass rush. But this way, if you bring back Pennel, maybe your pass rusher of choice is a defensive end, and you actually can afford to do a little bit of that because you've just solved the depth problem on the interior. It makes so much sense. I hope it makes sense in the mind of the Chiefs and in the mind of Mike Pennel.
Yeah, 100%. So wanted to start there since that was something that just broke right before we went live on this show. I want to talk about the run game of KC and how much calmer I feel, although should we have some concern with the injury to Isaiah Pacheco, who has now been listed as week to week.
Yeah.
Something to at least monitor there. I want to talk about the offensive line, obviously a little smattering of what that means overall versus this particular upcoming matchup against the Bills. And there's another interesting conversation to be had about the Chiefs' slow start. And I think that's an intriguing thing that I do want to at least monitor and touch on, because I do think it is something that should at least be in the back of our minds. And there's a certain word I want to bring up. And before I do that, actually that word works both ways. Energy. It's been down to start games, but I have a lot of energy for one specific thing. That's Underdog. Oh yeah, baby. Football in full swing. Underdog is the place to go. Underdog, super easy. Just pick whether your favorite players will go higher or lower on stats like rushing yards, receptions, touchdowns, and more. Get your pick right, and you can win to 5,000 times your cash. So what I did, I was feeling pretty good. Higher on Kareem Hunt. Love it. Higher on Rashee Rice receptions. Also love it. Marcus Mariota. I went higher. That fumble, you son of a gun, Marcus Mariota. You sold. If you don't fumble that ball, you actually would have picked it up. But because Marcus Mariota just had to fumble the ball backwards, he decided, hey, Sterling, what if you don't win your overall underdog pick'em because you went higher? And because of that fumble, he went lower. It's okay, though. You know why? I had fun until the very end, even in an ass kicking. You don't have to do it just for Chiefs. Do it for NBA. NBA is back as well. NBA is great on Underdog as well. And you can get right in on the action. If you sign up with promo code Arrowhead Addict, you can score $100 in bonus funds or entries when you play with your first $5. That's promo code Arrowhead Addict. Underdog, make picks, win money. Must be 18 plus, 19 plus in Alabama, Nebraska, 19 plus in Colorado for some games, 21 plus in Arizona, Massachusetts, and Virginia, and present in a state where Underdog Fantasy operates. Terms apply. See assets.underdogfantasy.com/web/playing. Get terms_DFS_.html for details. Offer not valid in Maryland, Michigan, New Jersey, New York, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. Concerned with your play, call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.ncpgambling.org. In New York, call 24/7 HOPE-LINE at 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369.
7.2. I mean, you're still. I honestly, I think you're one of the great talents. Still, like your disappointing performance is still better than most. But sometimes you gotta have one of those days. It's all right.
I ate a sandwich before this, and you can feel the bread.
I thought I saw a cold cut in your mustache there. So that makes
a little
bacon.
Bacon. I mean, come on. This mustache just thrives on bacon and black coffee. I'm a real man. Okay.
Like Baleen. You can filter all of your food through it.
I got my testosterone checked, and because I thought it'd be funny, it's for a remote, and I got it checked, and the guy literally walked back and said, "Well, boys, you're working with a real man." Earmuffs, kids, shit you not. That was verbatim what the doctor said.
I have 100 follow-up questions that I can mostly save until after we're done with this, I suppose.
We'll do the end.
That's great. I feel like most people should probably know where their levels are at and everything. So good on you. The fact that you can shave before bed and wake up with that mustache, I think probably would have been an indicator that your levels were good. But I'm happy to hear it.
All right. So speaking of energy, which I think we've brought to the show so far, one thing I do want to monitor. We've heard now 4 times, I want to say 4 times this year, where the Chiefs have said, and Patrick has said, yeah, they had more energy than us. They had more enthusiasm. They came out, we came out a little flat-footed, and our energy wasn't quite there to start the game. You said it in Brazil, makes sense. You said it in the Eagles game, didn't make sense.
But we saw it.
You said it against the Giants. I think it was a Giants game. And then now you said it this game to start against Washington. My concern is...
That's 3 NFC East teams and a Brazil game?
No, my concern is going into this game, you're 4-3.
Yep.
You were not. I know the season doesn't end today. At the time, you need to stack wins. It's not a guarantee you're making the playoffs. We all think you do, or they will. I'm sure they all think they will as well, but there's weird things that happens in the NFL. Mm-hmm. The Jets won a game. The Panthers have won 4 games, I think, this year. 3 or 4 games.
Shut out the Falcons, and I don't...
So, any given Sunday. So, my frustration, and I'm glad they figured out in the second half they were great. We've seen Kelsey have this, where he drops a ball because it almost feels lackadaisical. You've seen them come out flat, offense, defense, and you almost feel like they're bored or taking it for granted. And I don't love that it's now happened 4 different times. I don't think it's going to happen against the Bills, but we didn't think it was going to happen opening day against the Chargers. Now, Brazil does play an aspect and play a part there. We didn't think it was going to happen against the Eagles. So I'm not saying I'm panicked by it because this team's so talented, but I think it's something to at least keep an eye on of you can't keep starting games this slow and then afterwards saying, well, yeah, they just had more energy than us. You know when the game time is. I get it. It's the regular season and you're used to playing in Super Bowls, but you got to get there first. Just something I noticed and have heard this team talk about a little too often.
Yeah, I think it's a good pattern to keep an eye on. For the first time, I think I have a relatively good, I don't know if answer is the right word. I think I have a relatively good theory, and I think it should hopefully make people feel better because you're absolutely right. And especially those first 2 weeks when you don't end up being able to find a way to win that game, it's crushing. I don't know if I think the Chiefs had insufficient or inferior energy last night against the Commanders. So one step further back, during the Chiefs Radio Network pregame stuff, there are a couple times when I can give some keys to the game or some thoughts for the audience to keep in mind as we're moving the trains and everything. And I in like a whirlwind yesterday, I made my 3 keys to the game, 3 E's to the game. 3 things that I thought the Chiefs needed to be able to do. Energy was the first one. Energy, execution, and exorcism, just because Marcus Mariota had done some real witchcraft in that stadium previously. I felt pretty good about that. It came from the dome, and it was a good time. I think the Chiefs probably did what they needed to do from an energy and an exorcism standpoint, and you connected the proper dots here. The problem was a couple moments of execution. If Travis Kelce catches that pass instead of batting up his second interception of the year. I didn't misspeak. That's just how we're going to talk about him from here on. Travis Kelce has 2 picks. If he catches that pass instead of batting it up, I don't think we're talking about an energy problem. If Patrick Mahomes and Hollywood Brown are aligned enough on the second interception, I don't know if we're talking about an energy problem. We saw the Chiefs defense get pretty well pushed back, but then they create the turnovers. Washington didn't have an energy problem through those first 3 drives. The Chiefs defense just made the plays when it was playmaking time. So I think this is slightly different from those other games that you call back to. But the most important thing is that as opposed to Eagles and Chargers, and to an extent, I know you were talking about the Giants, but I'll bring the Jags game in for when I don't think it was an energy problem, but it was certainly an execution problem against Jacksonville. We saw the Chiefs do something that we haven't really seen them do this year, which is have one of those first halves where you go, why is this game tied? Why is this 7-7? Oh, cool. This is going to be a 17-13 final score, and we're all going to feel groggy tomorrow. That's not what happened. They did put the thumping on in the second half and really put that game away pretty early on. So that for me is cause for optimism, and it's cause for having more margin for error when you have Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy, which they obviously didn't have for those first 3 weeks. So I think it's a good thing to stay aware of, but it's also an interesting time to cross-reference that with Rice and Worthy and Kelsey's mistakes and to kind of figure out. This isn't an instance where I think like, oh, this is a coaching problem. Like Andy Reid didn't have his guys ready to go. And I think you could ask what was going on in the Brazil game. Like if you wanted to manage some things differently before that one, if you could do it over. In this case, I mean, the Brazil game also is funny because it's Travis Kelce and Xavier Worthy. Not funny, but interesting. So I think you can go ahead and ask those questions about Kelce's 3 big mistakes this year. And ultimately, I think outside of that, I think they were okay yesterday. But it's an interesting buzzword to keep having in our lives.
So what I want to get into now is the first half, second half difference. And I think for the defense, a lot of times it's the first drive and then second drive on, or first and second drive and third drive on, because
first 15-ish and on.
It's almost as if the defense, it's funny. I wasn't panicked at all. I was fully expecting
Me too.
Washington to score 7 that first drive.
Me too. This is my first time being zen about that this year, I think.
Same. It was the first time I was zen, zone, any kind of dip that you want to choose, I guess. Doesn't really matter to me.
Hey.
But yeah, I was calm. I was copacetic. I thought, sure, go ahead.
I think it's pronounced Copeland.
Loveland?
No, I was doing more dip. Doing more dip jokes. You said copacetic. That's okay. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm more of a grizzly guy, I guess.
Yeah.
But the point remains, the defense typically does this. They adjust. They see what you're going to do and then say, all right, you did it one time. You're no longer doing that the rest of the game. And if you don't score that first drive, you're going to struggle the rest of the game to put up some points. And that's what we saw from this defense. This defense deserves a ton of credit for a lot of what they were able to do, because they do get better as the game progresses. When it comes to the offense in the first half, second
half. The better
half,
joke for me would have been Copenhagen. If you would have said it's copacetic, if I would have said I think it's pronounced Copenhagen, that would have been a great joke. And now that I've solved that, I can shut the hell up and let you keep your point going. Sorry.
And I was thinking of Colston Loveland, so we both trucked up there. Yeah, someone was like, "What does he mean, Copeland Loveland?"
I watched the whole baseball game last night. I gotta get to 6:00. It's my bedtime tonight.
So the
second half.
Is there a better team at adjustments from a lot of standpoints than this Chiefs team? Now, I understand that most of halftime, from what we've heard from former players, is basically along the lines of you rock a piss, you maybe get something to eat and drink, and then you head back out there. But this team regroups extremely well, and you could almost see it. My thought was when they were not able to move the ball right before the end of the first half, I go, they're going to pound the rock on the ground in the second half. Andy's not a guy that traditionally does that, but I think even Andy could see, hey, we're getting some holes up front. Let's help out Mike Caliendo. Let's help out Jalen Moore. Let's get this offensive line back into a rhythm so the defensive line of Washington can no longer just pin their ears back and go after this. And they did. Kareem Hunt did a really nice job. Pacheco did a really nice job. I thought Jalen Moore had a great second half. I think that halftime really helped him regroup. Mike Caliendo was outstanding in run block this game. Some of the pass block metrics were not lovely for Caliendo overall. Kingsley Sumatia, yet again, ridiculously good, especially in the run game. I cannot say enough glowing things about Kingsley. Creed Humphrey is one of one centers in the entire NFL. And then Jawan Taylor, even though he had a penalty, I think you live with that one holding call. That's the kind of holding call that you expect from offensive linemen, even good offensive linemen.
Tackles on an island, that happens. Yep.
Yeah. And so I'm left just sitting here going, I don't know why I felt so calm, but I do feel calm when it comes to when you see pieces or things that work sparingly in the first half. I almost trust this Chiefs team to go back to it. And we saw that played to perfection in this game. So for me, I just really wanted to touch on and give credit to some of the adjustments first half to second half, because we went from a tight game to a blowout real quick.
Yep, and I think that I'm certainly that changes if it's Jaden Daniels instead of Marcus Mariota. How you feel at halftime is totally different and all of that.
Sure.
But with what the Chiefs have there, I think your point about like they're not in there at halftime dropping the game plan into a shredder and drawing up a new one on the whiteboard. Like that's just not really how it works. But I think especially with Spags, we just have this is true for both sides of the ball, but I've been thinking about the defensive side as you've been kind of breaking that down. I think especially with Spags, we have so much evidence now of those first 15 being kind of the fact-finding mission. I'm like, okay, we came into the game expecting you to do one thing, and I imagine we came into the game with plans for when we think you'll do this, when we think you'll do this, when we think you'll do this. And so it's less the new game plan, drop something new at halftime. I think it's more Steve Spagnuolo and that defense. You can give some credit to Nick Bolton. You can figure out how you want to spread the credit around across the defensive coaching staff that certainly all has a hand in it. But I think you get through those first 15 and you're able to collect the information that the opposing offense has put out there. Their first punch of those first 15, their best stuff and what they've been planning all week on doing to you on those first couple of drives. And Spags has been unbelievable at taking that and either adjusting to something surprising or, you can even think back into the Jags game and it's like, where was Noel Williams? Like we saw what was and wasn't working there. And it's not like Spags said, okay, sorry guys. We're actually going to go ahead and change who's in the slot and who's playing outside. But when there is a plan A, B, or C, it just seems like they are so effective at being ready for whatever it is that an offense is going to try to throw at them. Obviously, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes have an equally long track record of finding what works and figuring out how to keep it going. It's still hard to do, and I'm still super impressed by what they did in the second half.
This is a fun question from Scott. He goes, this has to have the highest ceiling of both sides of the ball of any Mahomes era team, like combo-wise. And my initial reaction is always going to be 2022. Because I feel like they married that very well. I think 21 and even 2020 also had very high ceilings offensively and defensively. But I think that this can at least be in the conversation. I think the depth of the wide receivers makes it at least intriguing, especially when you consider, as great as Sammy was, you do have to take into account the injuries. I think that's fair. And then wide receiver 3 on. I don't think the running back room is quite as explosive, obviously, as the Damian Williams-esque teams, but I do think, and even some of the Kareem Hunt, if you want to throw in that, but those defense of performances by those teams were not good. Defensively, I don't know if they're as good this year as they were even the last 2 years.
I think I have to poke a pin in the defensive thing just because I think you're still seeing Chris Jones and Steve Spagnuolo cover up and like Trent McDuffie and a good secondary. I think you're seeing them cover some warts perhaps, or at least from the ceiling question of it. If they had one edge rusher who could win fast and relatively consistently, like a top 15 edge rusher, then I think I'd be there. They don't. The offensive side, I wonder if it's the highest floor. If we might be able to argue that, because I think offensively, if you have an offensive line that is not a question in terms of submarining your offense, even you mentioning Jalen Moore, his worst half of football as a Chief came in the first half last night. And then I didn't see or hear a whole lot more of him from that point on, which is a compliment to a left tackle. I think if you say that the offense, again, maybe highest floor, when you don't have that implosion potential from your offensive line play, you have so many pass catchers that you can choose from and keep them fresh on the field if they're not all on the field together. A running game would obviously help raise your floor, but the running game we've seen these last couple of weeks with Rashee Rice back stressing things out in the passing game and the short passing game being an extension of the run, I'm good with that. I kind of like that.
When it comes to the defensive line, I want to touch on this briefly here. Karlaftis, I think, had the best game of the season for him. I saw a little pushback on Twitter, and I didn't understand it. There was the pushback of him winning quick and then not getting the second sack on Mariota in the second half. Mm-hmm. And the pushback I had was he won quick. I think it's someone else's job to finish that up. Like, you needed someone else coming from the other side or up the middle to wrap up. That's very hard to not only win quick, beat the tackle, and then bring down the quarterback. You a lot of times need a little bit of help. That's why a lot of times Karlaftis does get sacks. He's the guy that's the second guy.
He is
there.
that guy, right?
Yeah, he is that guy. And so when he was actually the guy that caused the pressure, you almost wanted a Minahu, or I don't know who else was on that play, to bring down.
Isn't that kind of the thing?
Yeah. And so I actually thought George Karlaftis had himself a really, really good game. I was very impressed, especially with a couple of wins. Even his first sack was him winning quick. Marcus got out of it. And then the effort came in from Karlaftis to bring him down. And you're like, you saw both things from Karlaftis on that one specific sack. That stood out to me. Thought Mike Dana did a really nice job, not just with the interception, which I know the ball was batted directly to him, but how many times you see defensive linemen drop that ball?
9 out of 10.
They're not sitting there on the jugs machine bringing that ball down. They're not catching punts, right? So they're not used to that. And then even on the sack, I know he had a straight line. How many guys get shook, especially by a athletic quarterback like Marcus Mariota?
Yeah.
I mean,
that's the Mike Dana thing on both of those plays is like, hey, you didn't do anything extraordinary on either of those plays, with the interception or his sack. But he did two things that were really important, as fundamentally well as you can do them, and his head was on straight both times. He was watching the ball on the rebound, and he pulled it in. He got nothing but space to Marcus Mariota, and he didn't freak out or get shook. Like, again, neither of those were freak athleticism plays. He was in the right place at the right time, but then he did the right things. Like, I am happy to give him a bunch of credit for that game.
Is this the best secondary in the NFL? And I'm not trying to be hyperbolic or just living in the moment of what we just saw, but they're clearly the best tackling secondary in the NFL. I don't think there's an argument there. Yeah. Every single one of these guys can tackle and tackle very well. Jaden Hicks, Brian Cook, Jalen Watson, McDuffie, they all made a massive play. Shamari Conner did as well. They all made a massive play at some point tackling in this game. So first and foremost, we can at least, I think, all agree on that. Yes. They're not going to get the most interceptions, which is going to hurt some of the cause, right? They're not. But McDuffie is playing at a top 5 cornerback level. I think we can agree there.
Yeah, I'm good with that. Yep.
I think Jalen Watson's playing at a top 25-ish cornerback level right now.
That seems right.
Like a back end CB1, top end CB2. No Williams, when he plays, has been playing like a legit CB2. And then you look at the safety room, and Brian Cook's having his best year of his career, even more so than his rookie year. They found a great role for Shamari Conner. So now Shamari Conner is no longer playing this slot role going up against fast wide receivers. They were playing him more as a traditional safety or in the box, a chess piece. And then you look at Jaden Hicks, the smattering of snaps that he gets, hard hitter. You see the smattering of snaps for Christian Roland Wallace. Looks good. I guess just to me, there's not a single weak link in the secondary. And in a lot of systems, I think the linebackers are a weak link system, right? Like you look at the Eagles, they have some really good cornerbacks, but then they have that CB2 spot that they cannot figure out.
Right.
And that guy just gets torched. I think you saw, was it Denver? It may have been Denver.
Yes, I think it was because Surtain went out.
Yes.
And they just started picking on the guy who came in.
And just got torched. And so it's such a weak link system. You can't pick on any of these Chiefs secondary members. And again, I'm not trying to, Shamari Connor in the slot. You can occasionally get a matchup here and there. But you saw Jaden Hicks against Terry McLaurin on that fourth down, and they were one-on-one, and he was step for step with their wide receiver one. I mean, again, these are just situations. So again, I'm not trying to be a homer or Chiefs colored glasses, but to me, this is easily a top 5, top 3, and maybe a case for the best secondary in the entire NFL.
8 snaps for Noel Williams, and I'm guessing a couple of those were probably at the very end when Joshua Williams was out there and you had Knowles out there and everything. So it's just kind of interesting because I was like, I can't remember how much I saw Noel Williams. It didn't seem like a lot. And the answer was no, not a lot. The Chiefs had 3 linebackers on the field a lot. It was a pretty heavy day on both sides of the ball, I think. So that's just putting a pin in that. Honestly, I just don't think I've watched enough of other NFL secondaries closely enough and cohesively enough to be able to say that definitively, but I can join you on a bunch of the superlatives of best tackling secondary in the NFL. I would assume so. And a group that you are, if nothing else, confident in. Like, I do still wonder, like, what does Justin Reid do from the jump if he's just here this season? But you have 3 safeties who you are already like struggling to find enough times and enough ways to get them on the field. Total confidence in Trent McDuffie and Jalen Watson. I think plenty of reason for confidence in Shamari Connor and even in a somewhat part-time role with Brian Cook. I think he's been underrated in what he's done this year, because when you're a safety who's on the field, like yesterday, 57% of the time, whenever you're a safety who's out there half to 75% of the time, most of the time, if we don't call your name, we're going to forget you're out there. And that is somewhat like an offensive lineman. That can be a real compliment to members of the secondary. So I am very comfortable with that group. I think we have largely sidestepped the Shamari Connor slot problems that we saw somewhat earlier in the season. But that's not because Christian Fulton's playing. He's a healthy scratch. And it's not because Noel Williams is playing. So I am curious to see where Connor's numbers have trended in terms of alignment these last 3 or 4 weeks. Be fascinated to see what they do against Buffalo. But Buffalo doesn't have any receivers who you're like afraid of from a matchup perspective. And if that's a job for Jalen Watson and Trent McDuffie all day, yeah, I'm completely. I'll say this. I think it's an even clearer argument probably for maybe the best 1-2 punch of corners in football. And there are going to be some other ones that have a real argument, but I'm very comfortable with that secondary.
I guess for me, the one spot you have to watch out, and we'll talk about it as we get closer to the game. I'd say if for some reason Shamari was in the slot against Khalil Shakur, that's the one thing that I think Khalil Shakur can do very well. He's very shifty. I think he can be that guy, but not consistently that guy.
Which to me means that's Trent McDuffie's job. Like, let's not overthink this one. If there's one guy in one alignment that you're afraid of, that's Trent McDuffie's job this week. And if that means we see more Noel Williams or we see an activation for Christian Fulton, so be it. Let the big guys go outside and deal with the bigger guys. And I'm totally comfortable letting McDuffie be your Shakir eraser.
I love this from Tom. Tom, this is great. Looky, everyone. 6'10 and 8'10 personalities existing and communicating together. There is still hope in society. Yeah, it's like we're just the political party and we're coming together. We're not going to have a shutdown. We were not going to shut down Arrowhead Addict. That's not going to happen.
No, we're going to work together for Chiefs Kingdom. And look, do Sterling and I have our differences? Of course we do. But when it's all said and done, my fellow Americans, my fellow Chiefs Kingdomites, when it's all said and done,
red.
I like that. We all bleed red. We're all here talking about one football team together. And Sterling Holmes and I, with Sterling as my vice president to my presidential campaign. He just found out that he's on the ticket, but I feel like we should be happy with that. I'm ready to lead you into the future. Into a future with Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, Andy Reid, and a 4th consecutive Super Bowl appearance. And with that, time's yours.
I want to be president, so I'd recommend maybe not going to a play.
I will go to a play every once in a while. The only
play we like is play action, okay?
Ooh,
that's what we're talking about.
The thing people don't give enough attention to in the Lincoln assassination is how famous John Wilkes Booth already was. Like that, it wasn't just like a thing where it was like this failed act. Like he was like the guy. Like
Yeah.
I don't want to put any bad juju on anybody, but think about the stars of today, and if one of them turns out to be a political assassin, just crazy, wild stuff.
Yeah.
I'm gonna not risk any of that.
Okay, good. I don't know where to transition.
Yeah, we went Lincoln assassination to we've gone offense and defense. I don't know.
Linebackers are great.
Good day for them again. I think Bolton and Tranquil played like the whole game, and Leo was out there half the time.
There was only one play of Bolton in pass coverage where I was like, "Oh, that's tough." It was that I think screen pass to Jeremy McNichols, who had himself a nice game, and he's a good receiving back to begin with. But I thought Bolton played really well outside of one play. And I think he's done that the majority of the season where there's like one play a game in pass coverage. We're like, ooh, I don't know. Yeah. I don't know, Jim. And where I'm like, I don't know if I want him in that spot. And it's not always his fault either, where you're sitting here like, I feel like that should be a job for someone else. I don't know why you're putting Bolton on him. But then he comes down and makes these bone crushing plays where you're like, okay, yeah, there's the Nick Bolton that I know and love.
That's like, this is, I don't mean this in any sort of negative sense. It's going to sound like it, but like, that's just life with a player with limitations and strengths and weaknesses. And sometimes you have to put a player with limitations into an unideal circumstance. So the offense has to guess what's coming next.
Yeah. Before we get into a little more of the run game, because I do want to get your thoughts in regard to Isaiah Pacheco and what that injury might mean for this team going forward. Yeah. Again, last we saw he is week to week. And we can have a smattering of conversation on Travis Kelce tying Priest Holmes for the all-time Chiefs franchise touchdown record.
Sterling, I love Priest Holmes. You know what he is in Chiefs history?
He is a true classic. Oh, true classic. Wow. What a transition. True classic. They started with a simple mission to bring premium, comfortable clothing to the masses. That means you and me. Because you know why? Because looking and feeling great shouldn't come with a designer price tag. People agree. People vote with their dollars. We've been a very presidential, like political, but being anti-political. And people vote with their dollars. And they have. True Classic sold over 25 million shirts to more than 5 million customers, racking up over 200,000 5-star reviews. It's not just about the fabric or the fit. Show up with confidence. Show up with purpose. That's what True Classic does for you. I'm actually really excited. I have a whole bunch of True Classic stuff coming. It's coming tomorrow. So for the rest of the week, hopefully it comes here before Best's show and myself tomorrow before Wacky Wednesday, because I'll be rocking a lot of True Classic. I'm really excited. I'm getting a few shirts. I got a couple Henleys. I got a couple of joggers. I got a pair of boxers. I'm excited. You can never go wrong with a good pair of soft boxers. And so I'm really excited. True Classic coming to my door really quick. Very fair and reasonable prices as well. And if you want to just skip the throwaway stuff, if you want to forget about the overpriced brands, True Classic, built for comfort, built to last, and built to give back. You can find them on Amazon, Target, Costco, Sam's Club, or head to trueclassic.com/Arrowhead to try them out for yourself. That would be very helpful. If you were thinking about this, if you need new t-shirts, I even see the chat right here. Jeremy, best t-shirts ever. Thank you, Jeremy. If you want more, go to trueclassic.com/Arrowhead. Try them out for yourself. Again, I'm getting some tomorrow. So I'm excited. I'm really, really excited. And hopefully you guys help. Anytime you guys do any of this stuff, by the way, that really does help us support the podcast and keeps us going. But again, we also believe in the product as well. If you know me, I will not talk about a product that I do not like or stand by. So True Classic, here's to you.
I'm looking at the website right now. Look at this bomber jackets, fleece bomber jackets looking kind of up my alley.
Yeah.
Good stuff on here. I enjoy the browsing experience here. I just went to trueclassic.com/Arrowhead and it brought me right here.
Boom. It's that simple. Like the Chiefs in the ground right now. Boom. It's just that simple. Because when you're seeing what Pacheco is doing, what Kareem Hunt is doing, Brashard Smith in the pass game, they've been efficient. They've been effective. I understand they're not going to be the most explosive guys in the entire world, But we know that. We know the Chiefs spent money elsewhere. Would you rather have a really good offensive line in a average running back room or the opposite? The Chiefs spent money in the trenches, and I think that's paid off dividends and made life easier for whoever you put back there. Kareem Hunt has shown a lot of juice recently, like a lot of juice. I don't know if you disagree with this statement, but I think Kareem Hunt is looking as spry in these past few games as he has at any point since his return to Kansas City. Now, again, he's not getting 25 carries a game, and maybe that will change.
But that's why. I mean, that's the reason that might be true.
And I think Pacheco has, again, that's why I was sad when he went down with the injury. It really looked like he was starting to get going. Yep. Like, it did feel like Pacheco was starting to really find a groove in a rhythm, and way fewer, oh, there's 1 yard for Pacheco. Oh, there he is running in the back of a guy. I thought that Pacheco was looking a lot better. And we see the sprained MCL, right? Was that what the official diagnosis was?
And that's all. That's reporting. That's not from the team, which is a
correct.
Distinction that, it does matter sometimes. The report that, sprained MCL week to week.
So week to week. So where do you lie on if he is going to miss the game against the Bills? I think you and I probably assume he's going to. If you're week to week and there's a bye after the Bills game, it would make a lot of sense to let him try and get right. If that's the case, and it's only a 1-game sample or a 1-game miss, you're probably not bringing anyone in. Does Mitchell get the call up? Does Brashard Smith get a larger role? Does Clyde Edwards-Helaire get the call up from the practice squad, which I think some people forgot he's on the practice squad?
Yeah.
Where do you lie here?
Carson Steele on the practice squad too. No, I think the simplest answer is the correct one here. I think Elijah Mitchell will be active if Isaiah Pacheco is injured. And look, we've all kind of been looking around like, so what does Elijah Mitchell have to do to get on the field as a healthy scratch every week, but with an active roster spot every week? So he's not just a practice squad guy. The Chiefs have said, like, no, we think he's worth being on the 53 because we don't want to expose him to waivers. Or actually, I don't even know if he's being a vet. I assume expose him to free agency and risk him walking. So I think Mitchell's there because they like him enough to give him a roster spot. I think he's up next. And I think he's the question, I think, is who's second in carries against the Bills behind Kareem Hunt. I'm not counting Patrick Mahomes scrambles because that will probably be the right answer. But I think Kareem Hunt ends up being the number 1 running back in a way that he hasn't yet been this year. I am with you on Pacheco's last few weeks. We've seen a few more of those under center runs, and he's looked really good out of those. And to your point, I feel like we've seen a handful of 8, 9, 10, 11-yard carries, not 30, but numbers that he wasn't able to get earlier in the year, and that it was, certainly late last season when he returned off of the injury. So I am bummed for Pacheco. I hope that it is a short absence. And you're right. If it's week to week, you've got a short week here, then the bye coming up. I think that probably makes the most sense in terms of how long you wait before getting him back into the fold. I think Brashard Smith will see some more work, but my hunch right now, reserving the right to change my mind on Thursday or Friday. I think right now, Elijah Mitchell probably ends up with more carries than Brashard Smith does against Buffalo.
Yeah, I think for sure, if you told me right now, or if I had to give you my answer right now, I think Mitchell gets more than Smith. I almost hope we don't see Hunt as the bell cow. Like, I don't know if I want to see him get 25 carries. I really think
I don't think we will. I think he might get 18, 16,
I really like him around this, 9 to 12 range for Kareem. It does feel like it keeps him fresh for the long haul. Now, you might also make the case that it's going to be a bye week after this, so let him just take a plethora of carries. Treat him like a bell cow because you do have a bye. I could entertain it. I guess part of me wonders if Mitchell would just take over the Pacheco role, and then Elijah gets 12 carries, Kareem gets 9, and you get like 3 for Brashard. Like, if you told me that Mitchell led the running back room in carries, I also don't think I'd be surprised. I don't know. I've been intrigued by the Mitchell situation all year long. Yep. I thought he was going to get an opportunity at some point prior to this. He has not. Maybe it's we're being silly and just assuming that Elijah Mitchell's going to be that guy, but you wouldn't have kept him as your fourth back on the active 53, not practice squad, active 53, if you weren't going to use him in case of emergency.
I mean, I think that's the argument for Elijah Mitchell. Is that, again, it's not even in case of emergency, because he's a running back. And in front of him is, by NFL standards, an old running back, a running back who's dealt with injuries throughout his career, and a young running back who was playing wide receiver 2 years ago. So I think with Elijah Mitchell, it's been more of a matter of time. Now, look, I was also interested week 1, week 2, week 3, like, hey, can we just see what he can do? Because these other guys have not yet hit that stride. But I think as the passing game's improved with Rashee Rice back, and that's obviously the thing defenses are most stressed about now, I think it's a little easier to run the ball. And I think Mitchell's probably worth giving a shot to see what he can do with it. I did see and this is not quite the same, but I saw somebody in the chat today, just give Brashard Smith 15 carries. He had 14 against the Raiders. Now, that was almost all in the second half. Most of that in the fourth quarter with Gardner Minshew. When the Raiders knew they were running the ball, he was running the ball into heavy boxes. But they did give him like some live ball touches there, which I think is a good thing for a young player. I don't think you can just say against the Bills, I don't think you can just roll him out there and see what you got in the young guy. I think you do need to try to make sure you're giving him smart touches, but his ramp up is not a mistake. Like I think he's going to be in the game plan on Sunday.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, I like this from Deshaun. Hunt already has a bone bruise. Using Mitchell makes sense, and that's a good call too. When Hunt went down hard, now it hasn't affected him in game, obviously, but we saw him take that hard hit. Was that 2 weeks ago when he took that real hard hit? Came out for a couple snaps, kind of limped off, and came back. It's a good call, actually. I like that as well. I guess let's finish here, Briscoe. Andy Reid is actually being more aggressive.
Yeah.
He talked about it going into this year. I remember the conversation vividly. It was after game 1 or game 2 against the Eagles. Maybe it was against the Eagles. And he was talking along the lines of, well, we've always been one of the more aggressive teams on fourth down. Yeah. And I looked at the numbers, and the year prior, it was like they were 26th in football on fourth down, going for it. And I looked back through like a 5-6 year window, and they're almost all in the 20 range. They're not a team that traditionally goes forward a lot on fourth down, as much as Andy apparently thought that they did. Yeah. But this year, they actually have been. And what have you seen? I believe they are 14 of 16 on fourth down this year.
Holy cow, is that right? That's crazy.
So, yeah, keep bleeping go for it.
Yep.
Kareem Hunt's been insane on these fourth yard short situations, but I love the aggressiveness of Andy. Now, I will say it helps when you have the personnel, you have the scheme, and you have to have the play call, because you're not always going to have the play call. I think a lot of years it was, we don't trust our offensive line to get 2 yards by running the football, so we only have a handful of these plays. And a lot of times there's that bootleg play with Patrick going out right, a little whip route from a wide receiver, and they probably said, we don't want to use this every single game because then everyone's going to catch on to this. So you wanted to hold some of that back at times. This year, though, it just feels like, all right, Kareem, go ahead and go. Jason told me today, Kareem's been stopped, I believe, 1 time on fourth down. 1 time. Kareem Hunt has been better on fourth down percentage-wise than the tush push.
Yep. I believe that was true entering this week as well. Yeah, he's been remarkable. I think I called him somewhere the one-man tush push, because that's what it's been. I think it's fascinating. Andy Reid, when he's talked about fourth down decisions in the past, look, the Chiefs do have stats people, like analytics people, and Andy Reid does hear them. But when Andy Reid has talked about going or not going for it on fourth down, he usually says, like, oh, it's a feel thing. Like, we've got, I think, Mike Frazier, we got Frage, but it's also going to be a feel thing. And I'm now paraphrasing, but Andy Reid's going to go with his gut. He's going to make a call because he's been a head coach in the NFL for a lot more than a lot of the people watching have been alive. So that has been frustrating at times, because sometimes his gut leads him to a very non-analytical decision. What I think is happening now is the aggression of the NFL, and specifically, we saw the Chiefs not be that kind of aggressive against the Jags? Weren't there 2 4th and 2 punts for I think each 40 or something right around there? I'm probably getting a yard or two off.
But correct, yes.
They weren't aggressive in that game. And my hunch is because Andy Reid didn't think the Jags were worthy of the kind of front foot aggressiveness and maybe a couple of those play calls you really like that you did roll out in a divisional game in Brazil or against a very good Eagles team in week 2 to keep that lean forward going. And I think we've seen, to your point, from Hunt, from the O-line, from, of course, and foremost, Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid at this point, it would be indefensible for him to be at a point now where he didn't also want to see Patrick Mahomes with 4 tries to get a first down instead of just 3. That's the simplest argument to me. The 2 arguments for 4th down aggression to me, even beyond the analytics, just general aggression, more so than the NFL has had until the last 5 years maybe, is it's worth giving your quarterback a 4th try. And also, if you convert that, you're stealing a possession as opposed to punting. You're almost creating a turnover. The secondary argument is do the opposite of what the defense wants you to do.
Yes.
And 9 out of 10 times, that defense is not going to be happy to see Patrick Mahomes on the field instead of Harrison Butker or Matt Araiza. So that to me is a beautiful, beautiful evolution from Andy Reid. And look, if his gut takes him to a place where he's more aggressive than the analytics, I would much rather him be more aggressive than the numbers than less aggressive than the numbers, because I want Patrick Mahomes to have the football in his hands as much as possible.
I wonder if his gut ever takes him to Town Topic.
I think it does. I think we have evidence that it does. Yeah.
It's great burger. If you're not a KC, but you're a Chiefs fan, you're like, what is Town Topic? It's a great burger place. Downtown KC, 2 locations very close to each other too. Great comment by Steven. I really want to hit on this because I think it's a intriguing one. Has the new kickoff rule changed Andy's philosophy on going for it? If a touchback gets you to the 35 and our kickoff coverage gets you to the 36, going for and 4th seems to be a better net positive. And I think there is an intriguing argument for if there but there's a good chance of scoring more, a good chance of teams getting in field goal position more often, then maybe going for it does make more sense, and getting stopped there is kind of the equivalent of just a touchback. So I think that's interesting, Steven. I like that. And again, by the way, shout out Travis Kelce, tying Priest Holmes for the all-time Chiefs franchise touchdown record, and shout out Patrick Mahomes, because when Travis Kelce caught that, he dropped the ball. Who was the guy to pick that thing up and make sure it got to where it needed to go? Patrick.
40,000 yards as well for Patrick Mahomes in that game. Not alone in that game. That got him to 40,000 yards. I believe it was.
That has to be a record. 40,000 in one game feels like a record.
You would certainly think
I can't confirm. I cannot confirm, but I feel like that'd be a record.
You know, everybody's got to play the Panthers sometimes, so I don't know. I don't know. Maybe if Josh Allen had about that all purpose on Sunday. That was a great question, a great comment from Steven. And I think Greg Olson just recently talked about that as a upcoming evolution. I think it's a really smart thing to be thinking about. I think for the most part, Andy Reid's 4th down aggressiveness that has heartened me has been in punt situations as much as it's been in field goal situations that would obviously lead to you kicking off. And then you also have Butker struggles this year. So I think there's a lot of factors at play. I really like that from Steven. I really like Travis Kelce tying Priest Holmes in many more games played, but 2 rightful legends of this organization in so many ways. And Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce, just rewriting the record books in the way that only they can. I will never, ever get tired of that.
Yeah. Appreciate everyone hanging out here, listening, having fun with us. It's always enjoyable on a Tuesday following yet another Chiefs beatdown of their opponent. Hopefully this continues into next Tuesday as the Chiefs hopefully do the same against the Buffalo Bills. Josh Briscoe, make sure you check him out on the X at JB Briscoe, and make sure you check out all of his great work as well. He'll be coming up in about a half hour to 45 minutes, probably because Nate and Seth will keep him waiting. That seems to be, I think, the norm for you.
My lawyer, who is also Seth, has advised me not to comment, but I am not disagreeing with the words that Sterling Holmes just said.
And give us a 5-star review, please. A comment, a review. even if you have like a opinion or something you want us to do differently or change, or even a criticism, try giving us 5 stars. Leave us that review, and then we know. But at least just look at the 5 stars.
And it better be a 5-star criticism. I'll tell you that. Like, you better really bring the heat on something. Give us something actionable.
And if you are looking for clothing items, go to True Classic and make sure you go to TrueClassic/Arrowhead. That is how you can help support this show. Appreciate everyone. Until next time, we are out.